Well, thank you so much, Paul, and thank you all for being here. This is our second Innovation Summit, and we are so excited to have fantastic innovators. And so we're going to jump right into it. And if you could maybe tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Elijah Ross. So I'm a native of the DC metro area, born here, but Fearless was started about a little over 15 years ago, with $6,000 and in my mom's basement. So you hear those stories of founders that started the company in the basement. I did that. Couldn't afford to do that. And so we ended up renting our house out and moving back home with my family to my mom's. So that was a fun experience. But kind of as we grew as an organization, one thing was pretty clear. Saw that technology was powering all sorts of amazing things in the world. You go to stock markets, on your phone, everything, right? But when we thought about things in the grand scheme of things that actually matter, right? We talk about things like education, things like healthcare, things like social justice, nonprofits, doing amazing work, right? All these organizations are doing such great mission-based work, and governments as well. And they didn't have the same technology that the other sectors supported. So we really built our business around providing technology in those worlds to further those missions. And so our vision is to create a world where good software powers things that matter. Again, those missions that we think are so important. So Fearless, we've had an interesting story. So started off supporting DoD and the intelligence markets. Grew from there. It's a really cool space to get in until one day someone asked you and says, "You sound pretty cool. Would you work with us?" Well, we said, "Yeah, we'll work with you." And they said, "Well, great. Send us your portfolio." I said, "I can't. It's classified." You're like, "Okay. Well, who are your customers?" Can't tell you. Well, give me a number. Can't tell you. Right? So really having to reinvent yourselves and create a space in the market. But we've grown from a company of one a few years ago to one of the fastest growing in the country at this point. We've been able to scale very successfully, so we're the largest software developer in the region currently. And really, what I've been so proud of just isn't about the work, but how we've done it, right? Really with this eye towards building inclusive environments, inclusive communities, and supporting the pipelines that will help our entire ecosystem continue to thrive.
Excellent. So tell us what everybody wants to know. Fearless. Yeah. How'd you come up with that?
So Fearless, Fearless is not my first company, it's my fifth. So, which really means I've had a number of failed startups through undergrad and learned a lot along the way. So I knew I wanted to be in business pretty early on and tried a number of startups. And even though I felt like I had been prepped for this forever, even starting from a kid, my parents split when I was fairly young. And youngest of three boys, my mom said, "Great, you guys are excited and want all the games your friends have and all the shoes and all the cool things that they have. You got to work for it." And we knocked door to door and hustled and did everything you could imagine. We're talking, walking dogs and paper routes and cutting grass and washing cars and all of those things. And so that entrepreneurial bug was formed early on. So when it came time to start Fearless, I was ready. I'd had all the bumps and the bruises. And even with all of that, still terrified. Still terrified to jump out. And so really wanted a name when you looked at kind of the acronym soup within DoD, ABC Incorporated, EF Technologies, whatever, right? That would stand out, that being number one. Two, wanted to build something different, right? Something that looked and felt different than all the other companies we saw in the market. And it was really a personal reminder to not be afraid to do that, right? Not be afraid to be different. And so that's where the name Fearless came from. And it served us well.
Excellent. So if you could go back in time 10 years and give yourself some advice, what would you say?
I would say I would have told me to be myself earlier. It is really hard when you're starting a business, right? In the world that I grew up in DoD, I didn't have a military background. I'd worked for a DoD contractor out of college, so I knew a little bit about that market. And so I'd go in these rooms and these folks that served together, or these folks went to West Point together, or whatever, and they had these connections, and often was the only black person in the room. And so I felt like I really just didn't belong in this space, but that's what business looked like. And so I felt like I had to do that. I had the suit on and I had all the things. I didn't love those things, but I had them. And so when we started, it took about, from 2009 to 2016, when we moved into downtown Baltimore, we were about 14 people. And a lot of our model was, we'd support these contracts, right, and these government agencies. We have a couple people on this contract here, a couple people over here, a couple people over here. And our team was saying, "Hey, Delali, we really are excited about this vision, but we want to work together. How do we come together and work together and build something and build this dream that you're talking about?" And so we pulled everyone off contract and we said, we're going to work together out of one space. We moved into downtown Baltimore. And we planted a flag and said, we're going to be us and we're going to be authentically us. And we started to grow, right? We started to really get really serious about our values and we started shouting from the hills, this is what we care about, this is how we do business. And that meant some customers fired us. That meant we fired some customers along the way. And so first 7 years, 14 people. From then on, the next 7, about 450 more.
Wow, that is amazing. So a lot of people, of course, look at me as county executive right now and a lot of the great things that our team is achieving. However, I lost my first race when I ran for office. Can you talk briefly about maybe a defeat that you faced and what you learn from it and how did you overcome?
Yeah, there's a lot. There are many defeats. I think a couple of the early ones were, and I'll talk about it in 3 phases. Some of the earlier ones were me trying to convince people to join this startup, right? Convince this company, and here's this big dream, and we're going to change the world. We really have this belief that technology ought to power these missions, and we're going to make tech for good and change the planet as a result and improve lives around the world. People say, that sounds great. How many people do you have, right? I'm sitting down with someone and their spouse, and I'm trying to convince them to quit a full-time job to come take a chance on this. And so many bumps and bruises, a lot of conversations, a lot of tears during that time trying to make it happen. So trying to overcome that was huge. And then finally we get started, we have a couple people, we're going, and then couldn't get contracts, right? We'd go knock on the door and we could build capability. I was a front-end developer, and I had a pretty strong skill set there, and they'd say, it's too much paperwork for a couple people, right? If you're a bigger company, maybe it makes sense for us to hire you. And so couldn't get anyone to agree to give us a shot. And it took about 1.5 years. So I registered the company February of 2009, didn't jump out full-time until April of 2010. So knocked on doors for a little over a year until finally someone said, they felt sorry, said, I will give you a break. We'll see if you can do it, right? And the rest was history. And I think the challenges continue. That's the thing about business. It's cyclical, right? There's always ups and downs. There's always challenges from raising capital. And so we've never taken equity investment in the company. So all of it's been organic up until this point. And even in that, people say, why'd you do that? Why'd you go that route? So I didn't know any better, right? I didn't know any better. No one was offering to give us money. And so us growing organically forced us to really get the roots deep in the organization. And so every challenge that I look at over the history of Fearless, they've been opportunities where it felt frustrating at that point, but it made our roots go deeper, right? We didn't have a bunch of contracts. We were 7 people, again, I talked about that, 14 people going into downtown, but we were tight. And it is that foundation that we still feel today within the organization.
Wow, that's great. So we have several creators, innovators, emerging entrepreneurs in this room. Some are at concept, some are still very early on. What kind of advice would you give them moving forward today? How can they be successful?
Today, and you probably hear this a lot, focus. Focus, focus, focus. I have always considered myself to be a serial entrepreneur. I don't think I knew what that meant, right? My assumption was that meant you had 5 kind of hustles going on at the same time. That is not a serial entrepreneur. That is a parallel entrepreneur, and it's a terrible idea. So don't do that. Serial entrepreneurs, you do one thing, get that growing to be successful, that can operate without you, then you get to go do a second thing. But you don't do more than one thing at once. And I think that was a kind of a hard lesson with the 5th startup, right? And making sure. So I'd say the first thing is focus. I'd say the second thing is really make sure that you are solving a problem your customers actually want. So many times we come to market with a solution, or we have the hammer and everything looks like the nail, right? And we're trying to force it down someone's throat. But if you're not selling, it's because the market is telling you something. Right? The market is telling you that the product isn't as innovative as you think. It's telling you they don't want it as much as you think they want it. It's telling you they don't like your price point. And so really understand why it's not moving and then pivot, right? Continue to pivot, right? And so be married to the outcome that you're looking for and not necessarily one particular solution, right? There's going to be a wavy path for you to get to whatever your destination is. And so be flexible along the way. And lastly, be yourself. Be yourself. I know oftentimes we go into business and it's, make sure you got your niche and understand what you're drilling down on, but the only thing that cannot be replicated is you. And so when you start to abstract yourself from the business, then there's a piece of what makes your business unique that is no longer special. And so you find out a way to service the market, but put yourself in it. I know people say that's bad practice and doesn't scale. Put yourself in it anyway. Because when you have the bigger separation you have from what you value in your authentic self and what you're servicing, there is tension that you got to operate with every single day, and it makes the business hard to operate. And so you want to get those things aligned with what you care about, what your goal is, what your mission is, what you believe in, and try to make sure there's a line between that and the business.
Excellent. Do we have any time for a couple questions from the audience, or how are we looking on time?
Yep, you go.
Excellent. So if there are a few questions from the audience, now you've learned that this guy is approachable. He's accessible, so you can ask him a question and not be scared. They're stepping up to the mics.
Yep, there are microphones in every aisle. So if you want to make your way, we have time for a few questions. If you want to make your way to any of those microphones in the aisles.
That's right. If you want to learn something about how to be fearless, now's the time.
All right. Nancy Early from South Navy. How you doing, sir? So, at the end of it all, when you're glancing back over your life and you're saying, this is what I've accomplished, can you sum it up? What you have accomplished given that fearless attitude?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of our thesis is around this idea that you don't have to pick between purpose and profit.
Wow.
And so for Fearless, as we've grown, we've kind of rolled out our new initiative that we're calling Fearless 3.0. And that's really our goals around 2030, which will be, we will improve 100 million lives in 10 countries and be $1 billion in revenue. That's our 110-1 plan, and they have to go in concert, the profit and the impact for us as an organization. And so when I think about the legacy moving forward and success, it's that we've changed what success in business looks like. You don't have to pick between the two. You don't have to pick between, do I value equity and diversity, or do I value profits, right? You can do the same. And in fact, I'd argue you have to do them better than the rest of the market for them to shift and to find value in it. And so I would want our legacy to be that we have become that example, right? The most impactful company on planet Earth, and people then follow that.
Wow, that's amazing. Got time for a couple more questions?
Yes, I'm your account.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Hey, my name is Steve. Is it Jamar or
Dalali.
Denali.
Delali.
Excuse me. I'm really impressed with everything you're saying. I've heard the company heard great things over the years. I was just curious, what's the connection between Howard County? I thought it sounded like your headquarters in Baltimore is more of a values-based connection, is choosing between profits. That's the reputation of the county, not choosing between profits.
Yes, two major connection points to Howard County. My business actually started in Howard County. So I was a Howard County resident when the company started. So that is the connection point to Howard County, and also intern at APL. So another connection. So I got my start here. So this place is a part of the legacy that helped to birth Fearless.
Wow, love that. Yes.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Steve Bond, the CEO and president of Resilient Source, the whole region where you started. And my question is, as you begin to grow and scale, you realize that you don't know everything, but also it seems that you can't afford to go pay people with that information. So how did you kind of select that board of advisors who would help you, grow and scale and not be getting those success?
Fantastic questions. We're actually literally doing that right now for the first time. And in hindsight, I wish I'd have done it a few years earlier. So we're in a place now where we're growing and we're scaling, and we're embarking on both a national and international expansion. And we're trying to get from A to B. But there are plenty of people that have been to B, C, D, E, and F, right? And so for us, right, and I think the temptation typically is, no, we got to do it our way. We're creative. We made it here. We're special. And yes, that's true. You get a sense of creativity that you get to operate on. But there's some stuff that's just brass tacks, best practice. You just have to do. right? And so us being able to bring together advisors that allow us their insight and their input to say, look, this is best practice, we got to roll out this way, and here's where we get to be creative, has been incredibly important. So when we talk about people being able to afford people, there are a lot of places that you can look. So SCORE counselors through SBA are a valuable resource. When I was starting, LinkedIn wasn't huge. You can post questions on LinkedIn, right? Probably within a couple of days, someone in the ether will answer your question, right? You don't have to pay for that. There's plenty of content online, on social media, courses that you can take. So all that stuff for kind of informal mentoring as you go. But even from an advisor perspective, you can pay advisors without cash, right? Some just want to do it. There are a couple of folks that are retired that they just want to give back. They believe in our mission and they want to help for that mission. And ultimately, even without cash, you potentially can compensate with equity. So you can give them a couple percentage points in the business between a group of advisors. It doesn't need to cost a lot. And they're now vested with you and have a kind of similar long-term interest in helping your company to grow. And so there's a couple ways that you can fund them without using cash. But I'd say for most questions, you'd be surprised. You just post on LinkedIn, someone will answer you.
Thank you. I just want to thank you for coming home to Howard County.
There you go.
Coming back to APL, where it all started. And thank you on behalf of all of our innovators, those who are hoping to make the world a better place. And also, as you said, be successful. And so thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day.